I think it's Napheesa Collier because I think we might be talking about something Big Three related here in a moment. But the way that Phee elevates her supporting cast, and let's not forget, AT is elevating her supporting cast,
Right.
but Kyle Copper and Satu Sabali are those women with or without AT. Do we say the same thing about Kayla McBride and Courtney Williams? Who are both excellent in their own right.
Sure.
Are you gonna what Napheesa Collier are you gonna get? Because she has been efficient and she's been effective since she's returned from her sprained ankle. But the first two games of the playoffs last year, she scored over 40 points, did she not?
That's right.
So what Phee are we getting? And both are excellent, but I think in order for Lynx to take this next step in this particular matchup, you're going to have to see Phee go back a little bit into that complete bulldog dominator mode that she was last year. And so in the context of this series, I think Phee is more important to the success of her team than AT. Just because of, I mean, it's going to be a scrum.
Yeah.
It's going to be a physical series. And how is Phee going to handle that?
Yeah.
So not particularly well articulated or long-term thought out, but I think that she needs to be the type of world beater that she was in last year's playoffs for this to be a convincing series win for the Lynx.
I couldn't agree more, Marcus. I couldn't agree more. I think Phee. So I'm answering this more, Marcus, in the sense of who's in the context of this series, who's more important to this team, to their team for this series.
Okay.
I think Napheesa Collier absolutely must outplay Alyssa Thomas in this series. I think that's what we're looking at. I do not necessarily think that Alyssa Thomas has to outplay Napheesa Collier because I think she has Satu Sabali. And I think I think Alyssa Thomas has to be great. She has to be what she's been, and that is great. And that's the centerpiece of her team, right? I don't think Minnesota can afford for Napheesa Collier to not look like the best player on the floor going up against Alyssa Thomas. I don't think that's possible. So I think Phee is more important because I couldn't agree with Dan more. She needs to be the Bulldog world beater. And right now in the playoffs so far up to this point, the Bulldog world beater is Alyssa Thomas. She's on the other team. And so right now it's really a fascinating thing that has been set up for us because we've been talking Phee in Asia most of the season. That they're the two leading front runners for MVP, but we all know Alyssa Thomas is right there after them. Somebody was going to have to go through AT. Stewie just had her crack at it. Her team wasn't up for it. And listen, you talk about world beaters. The story of that series against New York was that inverted screen and Alyssa Thomas bullying Sabrina Ionescu on switches. That was one of the biggest stories of that series. They literally picked on Sabrina. And I predict they might be going to that action more against Courtney Williams, who's a smaller defender, little thinner, not able to really match. I think Nate Tibbetts is going to that action a lot more against Minnesota's point guard as well. Courtney Williams, not necessarily like the defensive liability that I would say Sabrina might be in terms of like speed and quickness and athleticism. But in terms of frame and size, Courtney Williams is too small for Alyssa Thomas, and they know that. And I think they're going to try to use that some more. So I think this is a huge series and a huge test for Phee to remind people, hey, I was the MVP. I am the front runner for MVP. Like I'm still the top one or top two, not Alyssa Thomas. And I don't think Minnesota wins this series and comes out alive unless Phee does that. So I think Phee is my answer.
I hear you. I understand you. But Alyssa Thomas is the Phoenix Mercury.
She is.
Like, for all the reasons you just mentioned as to what makes this an important series for Napheesa Collier, That's what makes Alyssa Thomas more important for Phoenix. Alyssa Thomas set a bunch of records this year. Not only did she set the record for the most total assists in a season, and not only did she set a record or come close to setting a record for most assists averaged in a season, Alyssa Thomas set the record for the most points responsible for this season.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, there was a point in time towards the end of the season where she was responsible for more points than every player in the WNBA scored, except for Kelsey Mitchell and Asia Wilson. There is no Phoenix Mercury offense without Alyssa Thomas. That's number one.
Mm.
There's no Phoenix Mercury defense
Right.
without Alyssa Thomas either. Like, I know she wasn't one of the co-defensive player of the years, whatever the heck that means, but there is no defense in Phoenix without Alyssa Thomas. Now, at the top of the show, I lamented and I was a little bit bummed because I said that Jonquel Jones was the best player in New York, and then she was held to 1 of 10 last night against the Mercury, or the other night in that game against Mercury. You know who held her to 1 for 10? Alyssa Thomas did. And Alyssa Thomas wasn't just bullying Sabrina Ionescu. She was bullying Stewie a lot in that third quarter. I mean, put her shoulder down and had Stewie on her butt several times in that series. And so while I hear you guys on the point of, like, maybe Phee has a little bit more to prove in this series, and so that's what makes her needing to play better. I don't disagree with you guys that she has to play better, but Alyssa Thomas is absolutely more important to her team. We watched Napheesa Collier miss 10 basketball games, and this team, the Minnesota Lynx, won 7 of those 10 games. Now, granted, they won those games against I believe it was Seattle, Washington. I think they had 2 against New York, and they had a game against Indiana. There was a couple of ones, right? It's like maybe the competition at that point in the season might not have been all that stout, whatever. But we've seen this team be successful. This team is built well, and this team is more than capable of, and the players on this team are more than capable of rising to the occasion in the event that Napheesa Collier just so happens to have an off night. But if Alyssa Thomas has an off night, the Mercury are going to lose by 30. Like, there is no, and that is no disrespect to Ka. That's no disrespect to Satu, because Martin, Dan, you guys know I love both of them. But that's just how important Alyssa Thomas is to this team. I don't think the Phoenix Mercury are in a playoff team without Alyssa Thomas. The Phoenix Mercury don't beat the Liberty without Alyssa Thomas. And if Alyssa Thomas isn't playing Alyssa Thomas basketball, the Phoenix Mercury don't have a fighting chance in this series, because she is literally their offense and she's literally their defense. All those mismatches that we love to talk about, all those things, all of that flows through Alyssa Thomas. I just don't see a scenario where Alyssa Thomas can have a pedestrian basketball game at any point in this series and the Mercury win that game.
I hear your point. I almost talked myself into going over to AT as I was talking, and I think you made the right points there. I think, Dan, for me, as a basketball specific point, when I think about what these teams need these 2 players to do, why I still lean towards Phee is the shooting component.
Mm-hmm.
I think Minnesota, and I'm thinking, Marcus, I'm like, what is a pedestrian game? What does an off game for Alyssa Thomas technically even mean? Like, what does that act like? I'm not saying she doesn't have, but I'm just saying, like, you know, she only averages like 11 points a game. So what are you saying? Like, but I don't know if we can fairly measure. It's not like she averages 25 and in an on and off game, she only scores 10. Yeah. So, like, what is an off game? That's why I think an off game for Alyssa Thomas, which might be like, I don't know, 7 points, 8 rebounds, like 6 assists. Like, she's still going to do something, even if it's an off game. Satu Sabally, Kalia Copper, Sammy Whitcomb had a game this year with 38. She can shoot the cover off the ball. Tawana Bonner. They do have other players that can, and by the way, they already do those things because AT doesn't take on the scoring load. Mm-hmm. Napheesa Collier has to score. So she has to do for her team that AT doesn't. She does score, but they don't rely on her scoring.
So I wanted to look this up while we were talking, and I looked at the first 2 games of the semis last year between Connecticut and Minnesota. In those games, Phee averaged 14 points and 10.5 rebounds and 4.5 assists in the first two games. But the key, and I think this is where like I'm focusing my point toward, is she shot 33% from the field in those first two games. Now they split those 1-1, and these are obviously like very different teams, different roster construction. Sure. The matchups, I think, with like Phee and AT are going to be relatively similar. So the last three games of the series, if I go toggle to that, she averaged, I want to say, 27 points, 12 rebounds on 60% shooting. I think that's what I mean in terms of the difference of what Napheesa Collier are we going to get, because the defense is going to be there. Mm-hmm. The attention to detail is going to be there. I do think that this is a matchup wherein they need her to be the person that's pushing 30 points a game in order to get there. I think Alyssa Thomas, an off game, to Martin's point, is like, I've seen her have games of like 14, 5 and 5 this year that the Mercury won handily. And I think those things can replicate themselves because, similar to Phee, her defensive intensity is going to be there regardless of whatever her offense looks like. Right. So in an odd way, I don't disagree because I don't see the strength of your point, Marcus. It just has more to do with which of the massively important people I think is going to be importanter in this. So this is one of those where I'm like, yeah, you're making great points. And also, I think this is also very important. So, and how special to get two top three players at the peak of their powers. I'm so jacked.
Just head to head, man. How they respond to each other is going to be huge in this series. How Phee responds to the defense of Alyssa Thomas, which is physical and tough and gritty. How Napheesa navigates that is a huge part of how successful Minnesota will be on offense. Mm-hmm. And Marcus has been reminding us how good Phoenix's defense has been. They held New York under 75 points in all three games. All three games under 75. If we're looking at games like, and listen, Minnesota can win low scoring games. Mm-hmm. That's what I love about Minnesota. They can win high scoring. They can win a 3-point battle. They can win a game inside. That's the mark of many great teams, where they can win in different ways. So I don't think Minnesota is going to back down from a physical, defensive, low scoring game. They can play that game, right? So that's what makes this matchup like so fascinating. I think the quickness and the athleticism of Phoenix's defense is what we're going to see Minnesota have to adjust to mainly, because the way Ka and Satu and now Dan, they're playing without a traditional big. Nate Tibbetts is going full on small ball with Dewana Bonner, AT, Satu. Like, they don't play with a traditional center. So their defense is able, the switchability, the flying around, and not just that, but like, they have defensive mind. Kahleah Copper is a high level defensive mind. She will blow up. She will blow things up because she sees things ahead, and then she's athletic enough to act on it. Same thing with Asatu. So they're going to test Minnesota for sure with that defense. That's a fact.